Joe Fagan put his hand on me and he went, listen, Phil, I think, and I went, don't ever tell me what to do. I said, when I get out there on that pitch, we are warriors together. And I says, nothing will stop me. We are going to fight out there. And I says, but as mates, you don't ever tell me what to do. I'm looking behind me like that. And these two are jumping up, nearly heading the ceiling. Come on! Roy Keane, you gotta get that, Jeff. And I admired him. I admired Gary Neville, believe it or not.
Hello, I'm Jeff Stelling and this is Football's Greatest. Each week I'll be sitting down with a legend to discuss and debate some of the best exponents of the beautiful game. The players that got you off your seat, the hard men that made you wince, and the moments that will stay with you for life. In this episode, we're going to talk about leaders and leadership. We definitely have the right man with us, a man who captained his club and his country, a man who was assistant manager at Liverpool, and a man who stepped into the breach to become manager when Gerard Houllier was taken ill. A team player in every respect, as well as he showed on the panel of Gillette Soccer Saturday. It's Phil Thompson. Hi, Phil.
Jeff, you all right?
Yeah, very good. And those Gillette Soccer Saturdays, we're talking about leadership, so let's get straight down to it. Obviously, you regarded me as the leader. What sort of leader was I?
So, have we started? Oh, you... do I have to do this?
Yes.
And listen, we always knew our roles. Us four lads there, Mers, Charlie, Matt, we knew our roles. We were there to do what we did but we wouldn't have done it without you. And it does. No blowing smoke because I'm here and I've got to do it. You did. And you were the one who led us on. Most of the time, stop nodding your head. Most of the time, we would be there and we wouldn't have got done what we would do without you. And a lot of the time, as you would know, the show was better on a Friday night. Sitting in the bar, having our gins, having our wine, having our beers.
Having our water in my case.
And you'll have a nose like mine soon. And so it was great on a Friday night. It was wonderful. And we would talk about the game, but not too many of the points because you save it. And without your leadership doing that and your knowledge of television and drama and theatre, that brings it out and got the best out of us.
I used to model myself on Napoleon because he said, once you've made your mind up, stick to it no matter what. No ifs and buts.
I thought it was because he was just 5'4".
I was coming to that. That's below average height for a man, even in Guatemala. So look, what was it like lifting that European Cup as captain of the team that you've loved and lived for?
Do you know what? It was the most wonderful experience. Was it the highlight of my Liverpool time? Probably not. 1974 FA Cup final, beating Newcastle then as a 20-year-old. That as a game and but this was my moment. This is why this was different, because it's me. And I'd seen Emlyn, the great Emlyn Hughes, lifted in 77 in Rome against Mönchengladbach, against Bruges in 78. And becoming captain of Liverpool, you've got this one moment that you're thinking, hopefully I get my time and I can do this. And it happened May the 27th, 1981. Not that I remember it too well. And it's great being the first Scouser. Emlyn, don't forget, was from Barrow. I was the first Scouser to lift the European Cup. So it was this great thing, and people picture me going to get that cup. And the fella, the grey-haired guy who is passing over, shakes my hand, who's passing over the European Cup, he goes to lift it. He goes to lift the Euro. And this is my honour. And you can see me with my hands going like that and going, give me the cup here now. And it's a moment in my time that you get that and you lift it. You got the armband. And it made it special because I was a Liverpool fan. I was a Liverpool fan as a fetus. And it was the most special moment, the one moment in your life lifting that trophy. So, yes, you're right. And as you can see, it was a great honour that I lifted, the biggest club prize in world football for me.
It's a bit of a cliche, but are you a believer in born leaders? And I'm thinking of Ben Stokes, Ian Botham, Martin Johnson, Sean Fitzpatrick. Do you believe there are born leaders?
Yeah. I always think there's something in you. And I was always told when the captaincy came to me, like to Phil Neal and my mate Terry McDermott, this was yours. They seen it in me, that was there. I've seen people come before me who were great people, who I knew would go on to be it. And there has been a shift and change, as I say, when Alan Hansen became. But we'd had, sort of Alan Hansen, who was calm, but you did still have those great leaders, and you could see it in them. Graeme Souness came after me, who you could see, and you knew he had it in him. How he became it was one of my bad points of my life, but that was...
Well, how did he?
Well, it was... I loved being captain of Liverpool. Absolutely loved it. We'd just been beaten on Boxing Day 3-1 by Man City at home. Bruce, the juggler, was at it in the game. He'd just arrived in that summer, 1981. So things were all going wrong. And I can remember the awful day. We were coming back from training in between that and the third round of the FA Cup, playing Swansea away at the Vetch. And Swansea were then in the top division. And I can remember coming back from training, and Joe Fagan came down the bus, because we always went by bus to Melwood and come back. Joe Fagan, as we were coming back, came along the bus and he went, "Thommo, the boss, Bob Paisley, wants to see you after training." And I thought, what's that all about? So I'm sitting next to Terry, my mate, and I wonder what all that's about. And he went, "I don't know." And in front of him, Ray Kennedy, God bless him, he turned around and he says, "I know what it is." And I went, "Oh yeah, what is it?" And he went, "Can't tell you." And I went, "You can't do that. You can't say, can't tell you now." And he went, "Okay, you're having the captaincy taken off you." I said, "You what?" I said, "You joking?" He said, "No." He said, "That's what he's going." So I was furious. I was in the bath. Yeah, the bath. Got myself done, and I raced down the corridor to Bob Paisley's office. I went in there and I said, what's happening? Bob wasn't very articulate with the way he spoke and everything, and he's going to bumble his way through this. And we're going to, look, the captaincy seems as though it's a burden to you and responsibility. You're taking everything on your shoulders. And I think and I said, "So you're going to take the captaincy off me?" And, yeah. I said, "Well, you wouldn't be giving it to that Graeme Souness by any chance, would you?" And he went, "Yeah, well, we'll do it for a few weeks and see what happens." And I said, "No." I said, "This has been happening behind my back." I got up, stormed out, slammed the door shut. So it had been going on behind my back. And that's what more upset me. And because things weren't going well on the pitch, granted, but you don't like players who are sort of in the background. So we didn't speak, Graeme and myself, for about 3 or 4 weeks, because I knew this had been happening. If it had just happened, not a problem. It happens. It evolves, captaincy, as I took over from Emlyn. So I was very disappointed, but I went out against Wolves. Went out against Swansea, third round of the FA Cup, massive game, third rounds. And I was like that. I was fuming. So captain in the front. When I was non-playing captain, I was at the back. So I'm just going out the door, and Joe Fagan put his hand on me and he went, "Listen, Phil, I think..." And I went, "Don't ever tell me what to do." I said, "When I get out there on that pitch, we are warriors together." And I says, "Nothing will stop me. We are going to fight out there." And I says, "But as mates, you don't ever tell me what to do in my private life." And I stormed off out to the pitch. We won 4-0. We won 4-0. I played probably one of the best games. And you know what? Bob Paisley made the right call. At the time, I was emotional and I was so angry. But I had took too much responsibility. I took responsibility for every goal that was scored, every team meeting. Go like that, and he'd go, when the player went past Phil Neal, and I went, but if I'd covered Phil a bit more and been a bit more towards him, and then when the ball come across, and they were going, how did you miss that header? I said, "No." I said, "That was my positional play." And I thought about it, and I thought, you're spot on. He's been watching this. Bob was very, very clever. And he'd watched and he'd seen me taking all this responsibility, and it was affecting my game. And my performances from then, and we were 12th in the league, 12 points behind the leaders. We went on to win the league by 7 or 8 points, something like that, with 3 or 4 games to go.
And we'll talk about 1 or 2 more Liverpool managers in a moment or two, but this seems to be something of a theme, and I didn't mean it to be like this, but in international terms, Ron Greenwood was the England manager, and he overlooked you for the captaincy for the '82 World Cup, didn't he?
Thanks,
that
Jeff.
was an irritation as well.
Thanks for reminding me. Listen, it was at one of those times in my life, 1982, European Cup winners, 1981, going to Spain. I was probably the only one of the back 4 who could call the position their own. I was the mainstay. Ron Greenwood had trusted me with the captaincy when Kevin Keegan was ever not available. And when he was injured or he had a commitment, because the first time he gave me the captaincy against Bulgaria, we had to replay it on I think it was a Thursday night, because it was called off from fog. Give me the captaincy. I couldn't believe it. I was absolutely delighted. Great honour. And so then I captained England about 6 times. So he goes to the World Cup. Ron's asked me, who do you think should play alongside you, which had options. And it was Terry Butcher. Terry was this new up-and-coming leader, and you could see that in Terry. But I can remember on the day before the opening game against France in Bilbao, and I'm there, and you're playing. I knew I was playing. That might sound arrogant, but I knew I was that one player. So the day before the game, and when you get the arm round the shoulder as a player, probably you wouldn't know, Jeff, but you get the arm round the shoulder as a player before the game, I thought, I'm playing and I know that. Why is he doing this? And his words, I found it, and was, for me, I loved Ron Greenwood, absolutely loved him, but he goes, listen, Phil, over the captaincy tomorrow against France, I've been thinking about it, and I think it's going to be Mick Mills' last tournament. He said, so I'm going to make Mick Mills captain. He was captain of Ipswich at the time, but I was captain of Liverpool. And I went like that. And straight away I thought, I never said anything. I was distraught. I was really gutted. And I thought, Ron, this might be my last tournament. You never know. Because I was like sort of 28. And lo and behold, it was my last tournament. So Mick Mills lines up against France in Bilbao. It was like sort of 34 degrees heat. It was, and I'm looking at Mick leading the team out. I was so jealous. So this was a World Cup. This was a great time for me. And he overlooked me because of a little bit of sympathy for Mick Mills. And I thought that was a wrong call from him. Didn't do us any harm. We had a fantastic sort of World Cup. We only conceded 1 goal in 5 games. So, but I was distraught. Mick captained us in every game.
Now, thanks for watching Football's Greatest on YouTube. But can I ask you please to hit that subscribe button? That way you won't miss any of our future episodes, and we have some great guests coming up on the show. We're going to come on to players in a moment or two. But look, over your years at Liverpool, you played under some absolutely fantastic managers. But there's one who just stands out all the time, and I know what you think of him, and it's Bill Shankly. So what set Bill Shankly aside in terms of leadership?
Yeah, sometimes you get quite emotional about these things, and I do, because it was my football club. And yeah, I look at Bill Shankly, and was it just the way he was and that belief that he gave you? He had the great sort of socialist values, people's person. He arrived in December 1959. We were in the 2nd division. I was a big Liverpool fan. I'm sort of 5 years of age, and I don't sort of remember sort of Bill Shankly coming, but then I knew the players and all that. And then we started building. And then you get Roger Hunt, Ian St. John, Big Yeatsy, Tommy Lawrence. The players start coming up and you start believing, and you go on, you get promotion, and then you win the league in 1964, playing a great style of football, and the FA Cup in 1965. Then we win the league again in 66. So the middle 60s, Merseyside, Liverpool, even Everton were good. Honestly, and they had a great team, and we had the best music scene, the best comedians. So it was the centre of the universe. So I'm a young kid, so impressionable, but we've got this man he would be wonderful now on television with the likes of Sky and BT, TNT. You would see this man. He would be, people have probably seen Brian Clough a little bit more. You had this guy who's captivating. And we were there. We hung on every word he said. And it was there because you would get a little bit on the TV. We had a Friday night thing, Granada Sports, or just a little bit on the radio. His voice was wonderful. He had that great gravelly Scottish accent, which I don't know what helps. Because Andy Gray, you remember Andy Gray doing the co-commentaries? Why was he so good? Even Alan Brazil. When Alan became a co-commentator, the great Scottish accents, and it made you more, I don't know, excitable. But listening to Shanks, and that, you might remember his words, going to build us up to be a bastion of invincibility. And we were like that. Oh. And we were blown away by this fella. This fella said, go and run and walk across the Mersey. We could all do that. We would follow. We would do anything because we believed. And he believed in us. It was a togetherness that brought... You think about those late 50s and early 60s, it was managers and shirt ties and very staid, very sort of... that he started to book that trend. He started to become that. Him and Jock Stein, Matt Busby, become very iconic figures at football clubs, at big football clubs. And it was just a moment in time in the 60s when you as a football fan... absolutely in love with your team. And it was great going to school Monday mornings, wearing your red and white scarf. And it just brings back so much passion from me. And it was all because of this guy. Yes, I had my footballing hero, but he to me as a manager was just wonderful. As you can see, it was just big. The 60s was a great time to be a fan.
Can you remember anything, any sort of comment from Bill that stays with you till this day?
I was a young midfield player when I started, average midfield player, before I made my name as a centre-back. And I played about 4 or 5 games on the run. I'm thinking I've made it. I'm 18 years of age. And we're playing Arsenal at Anfield. And you look and it's a big game, but it was a muddy pitch. And maybe that had something to do. He left me out. I was 12th man, only one sub. So I was absolutely gutted, but not a problem. So the boys went out, played the game. We got beat 2-0. John Bradford scored, Alan Ball scored. So he comes in. I comes out the dressing room. As I said, Shanks was my hero, but my mentor was a guy called Ronnie Moran. Great player in the 50s, into the 60s, became a coach in the late 60s. So Ronnie's waiting outside the door and he says, Phil, he said, are you going to have a word with the boss on Monday morning and ask him why he didn't play? And I said, Ronnie, not a problem for me. I said, I'm just glad to be here. He says, Phil, that's where the problem lies. If he thinks you'd accept it, he'll do it to you again. I think you should go and see him on Monday morning. So I went home and I spoke with my mum, who's a massive Liverpool fan, huge Liverpool fan. So what should I do? He said, if Ronnie's telling you to do that, son, he's giving you great advice in your young career. You've got to see Mr. Shankly on Monday morning. You've got to be brave. You've got to be courageous. You've got to go in front of Mr. Shankly and ask him why you didn't play. That's not the answer I was looking for, Jeff. So Monday morning, drove up Putney Avenue along Anfield Road into the main stand car park in my Ford Escort. Parks against the wall, goes down the main entrance towards the boss's office. He's just coming out. His face is still red and angry from the weekend. He looks at me and he goes, morning, son, morning. I said, morning, boss, can I have a word? Come on in. Sit down. What can I do for you? Why? the weekend. Jesus Christ, son, you want to know why you didn't play at the weekend? You should be in here thanking me for not playing you. That load of shite out there on Saturday, Smith, Callaghan, Lawler, they're finished. They're has-beens. They're never going to play for this football club again. But you, son, you're going to play for this football club for many years to come. You're going to captain this football club. You're going to play for your country. I wouldn't be surprised that you captain your country. Jesus, you should be in here on your bended knees thanking me for not playing you. Well, I stood up, I bowed. I backed out of his office. I caught my head on the top of the door. I was 10 foot tall. I felt $1 million. Only problem was he still picked the same team the next week, didn't he? But in his 5-minute rant, he panned out my whole career. He had that vision. And that's what I'm saying, knowledge. And people say, how would Shankly be in this modern age? He would relish it because he could change.
We'll come onto your spell as a manager in a moment, but let's talk about some players, for example, who were, starting probably in your era, who were the leaders? Who were the big players? Who were the people you looked up to?
There's one. There was loads of big players when I started and came into the team, because at 18, I'm looking around. These were still the guys that I was watching from the terraces. Tommy Smith's there. Oh my God, if it was one... I always believed Tommy Smith was the greatest leader and captain Liverpool's ever had. And you do, it's right. And I've seen lots, and I mean even modern day. This fella drove our team on, pushed our team on. He could be having a nightmare, and this is where leadership comes in. He could be having a rotten game, but he didn't shrink. He made sure he kept us on our toes. He'd be hitting 50-yard balls out to Steve Highway, never reaching them, going into the Kemlyn Road stand. And he would go, and you'd go, unlucky Tom. And it was, but he would be demanding. If I give a 5-yard ball away, 10-yard ball away, he'd berate me because he knew I could take it and I could come back better. So this fella drove us forward for years. And then Emlyn took over. Emlyn was a great leader, demanding by the way he played and with his passion. And I put something on Twitter many years ago, Tommy Smith, when Tommy passed. I put something on Liverpool's greatest ever captain. People that berating me saying, what about Emlyn Hughes? What? I wasn't decrying Emlyn, but I was asked as my greatest ever captain because of those great memories. Tommy was a proper leader.
Yeah, what about some other players, actually? Not necessarily ones you played with. Oh, you mentioned Terry Butcher, actually, so we might as well mention Terry. I mean, to a lot of people, I think Terry would be almost the ultimate leader because everybody remembers the picture of him with the bandaged head, blood on that bandage, so it was bright red, blood all over his shirt when he was playing for England against Sweden. I mean, was Terry a leader?
Absolutely. He had it in him. And I could see this young player who's developing with this young Ipswich side, him and Russell Osman playing sort of centre-backs. But you had this guy who was like 6'4", who was a colossus and who quite quickly came into the team. As I said to you before, Ron Greenwood asked me who would be your best partner to go to the World Cup. And it had to be Terry. Terry was this up-and-coming leader, if you want. I don't think he was captain then of Ipswich Town because you probably had Mickey Mills there, as I said. But this guy, you could see it in him and he could play. Terry for 6'4" and was quick. He could cover the ground, but he was hard. He was hard as nails. And it's not just because of blood pouring down his face. That doesn't make you hard. It's how committed you are. And it's not just one game. It's game after game that Terry Butcher was involved in. And this was a wonderful experience. Picture it. Hampden Park. You're going out to play Scotland. And you're going out. And it was always the Scots coming to Wembley that it was always their big game. And it was never, we were always going up there, lambs to the slaughter for England games. This was a time which was changing. More English players, fans were going up to Hampden. And we're in that tunnel. And we've got Terry. And we've got Paul Mariner. Again, 6'3", big, strong boys. And they're in the dressing room. And I could be volatile in the dressing room. Oh my God, I'm looking at these guys. Come on, I'm with you, Terry. I'm leading the team out, but I'm going, and I'm looking behind me like that. And these two are jumping up, nearly heading at the ceiling. Come on! And I'm going, like that. And I'm going into battle, because that's what it was, England, Scotland. And I'm looking at Terry and Matters jumping up there, and I'm going, let's go. They must have been looking, some of those players, even Souness and Dalglish, going, oh my goodness, what are they doing? This is not normally the way. And you're standing there in front and they're playing a national anthem, and you're lined up and you've got old men who are absolutely hating you, and the look on Terry and Matters' faces are just looking like that and snarling back, and you knew you were playing with proper players. And they're the big things, that Terry was a proper leader.
Look, there've been so many great leaders over the years, and I'm just thinking, right back the days of Bobby Moore through Steve Bruce, Tony Adams. But the guy who is most often voted as the greatest captain, if you like, the greatest leader, is Roy Keane. What do you make of that?
I get that. Roy Keane was a terrific leader. There was a lot of those Manchester United players who I actually admired during that time. But you know, I think who's a better captain than him and leader? Brian Robson. Robbo was so... I wonder how good he would actually be if he didn't drink as much as me and Terry Mack. I think we led him astray when he first came in the England side. But what a player. What a leader. Never, ever give up. Coming in there as a younger player in that England side, and you've seen him with it. I'm just sorry that, because me and Terry Mack wound him up when he was, I think he was maybe with the under-23s at the time, and he was there and he was always clinging on to Terry's and mine coattails. And we'd be there with Robbo, and we wound him up one day and said, Bob Paisley's asked us to tap you up. He was at West Brom, and to tap you up to see if you'll come to Liverpool. And he went, me going to Liverpool? Oh, I'm absolutely delighted. We did that for days. He thought he must have phoned that many people to tell them he was going to Liverpool, and we were winding him up. How much we were wrong, because he ended up signing for Manchester United, our arch enemies. And what a player. And then he played for England. Captain Marvel, I think, wasn't half of it, because he did everything. You're talking about players before who could do everything. This fella could defend with the best. He could be like a centre-back. He was the best midfield, and he could be the best striker. This fella was just, he could play everywhere. So Roy Keane, you gotta get that, Jeff. And I admired him. I admired Gary Neville, believe it or not. I love him on the telly, but most Liverpool people think, you hate Gary. It's a divine right to hate Gary Neville. I used to marvel because he wasn't a great player, but he made the most of his ability and was a damn winner. And that's the one thing, that Man United side, you could go through so many who were all winners. And that obviously grated with me no end.
Are you going to be allowed back into Liverpool? Because you've been singing the praises, of Brian Robson and Gary Neville, of Joe Jordan, of Steve Bruce and Roy Keane, your arch rivals.
It is, but as a player, Jeff, yeah, I could still hate Man United and I could still sort of do this, but I still respect good football and I still respected sort of winners. It's just Ryan Giggs. What he did in football was truly longevity, and medals to me brings proper legend status for me. He was winning games on his own. He was that influential in the side. So it was just by his personality that he was saying, I am the next leader. I am the next person to take this club forward.
Your greatest rollicking.
And after the game, he's in the dressing room and he went, is the captaincy too much for you? Is it getting to you? And I said, you can... Oh. And he went, what do you mean? Off.
Let's go back to your days as captain then. You're in the dressing room before a game. How much say have you got? How much influence have you got? Did the managers let you have your say?
Yeah, and not sort of giving you that say, but I felt it was my right. I was that certainly... You felt like, and you tried to have that last word before you go out. And the great thing about being a local lad, being captain of my club, not just the team, of the club. You had that great responsibility. And I look back at the words of the guys who weren't from Liverpool, Phil Neal, Ray Kennedy, all the others who sort of came to Liverpool. And Phil Neal often said, you Scousers and you, Thommo, were our motivation in the games against Bristol City, in the games against Southampton, in the games against Birmingham, in the lesser games, not the games against Everton, not the games against Manchester United, not the games against Arsenal, Tottenham, but in those lesser games at home when you expect to win, somebody has got to make sure you're getting the best out of your teammates. And he said, you were the one who were always driving us on. You were the one who was making sure that made us believe this was like an FA Cup semi-final or final. And he said, and I took that as a great compliment, as though that was my role. And I didn't know it at the time. I felt I'm captain, this is what I do. But it's when others realise what you're bringing to the party. I think that is more important. And those words of the other players of my time saying that about me, I found great joy in that. I found great honour in that I was doing my job. And I was a narc. I wasn't as much, because of my frame, I wasn't. So I was very verbal, very open.
What do you mean you were a narc?
All right. I was trying to be nice. Do you know what? It's funny, though. The first day as captain that I'm doing, and it was Arsenal again, and we're playing at Anfield, and Emlyn, Bob has just relieved Emlyn of the captaincy. And it's only an hour before kickoff. We're playing Arsenal. And Bob Paisley comes up to me and he says, Thommo, you're going to make you captain. And what people didn't realise, the couple of times before that, Kenny had been captain. They made Kenny captain in games. Kenny didn't want to be captain and didn't want that responsibility. So Bob came to me an hour before. I couldn't tell my brothers who stood on the cop. I couldn't tell my mum and dad who were on the way to the game. So this is going to be as big a shock to them, me leading the team out. And as we did back in the day, you never warmed up on the pitch. You only come out 5 minutes before kickoff when the referee pressed the bell. So I'm like that. I'm thinking, right, we're going to get out first, because the two teams didn't have to come out together. You could go out whenever you were ready, or at the latest when the referee presses his bell. So I'm like that. Some teams back in the day would get out first and go in the cop end to warm up, to upset us. Because we always go in the cop end. So you come out of the tunnel, you go towards the cop. So I'm like that. I'm thinking, we've got to get out early. I don't want Arsenal getting out there before us. So there's 8 minutes to 3. So I'm going round the place. Come on, boys. We've got to get out onto the pitch. And they're going, looking at the clock. Thommo, it's 3 minutes early. And I'm going, come on, boys. And they're going, Thommo, we know it's a big day for you. We know it's great honour for you and everything, but just calm down. Scousers, calm down. And I went, 7 minutes. Come on, boys, we need to. No, Thommo, we're not. And I'm like that. I'm nervous as hell. I'm thinking they can't get. My brother's on the cop. He's standing in the same position what I did with him all those years. So I'm thinking, I've got to get out there. I've got to see him. I'm captain of Liverpool. 6 minutes to go. I said, lads, come on, we need to go. And they went, oh, Thommo, all right then. So he comes out the dressing room. Good luck, lads, come on, let's go and do this. Comes out, goes down the steps. I touches the This Is Anfield sign above my head. I'm captain of Liverpool. Goes down the steps, up the steps, out to Anfield, into the daylight. I turns and runs, well, jogs, towards the cop end. And it gets toward the cop end, I get towards the D. I'm looking for my brother Owen, which I can spot him every game. Looking at him like that. I'm captain of Liverpool. I'm waving at our kit. Everybody's laughing. The whole ground's laughing. I'm thinking, what's going on here? What's happening? I turned round. There's Ray Clements, Kenny Dalglish, Graeme Souness, still in the tunnel. They're pissing themselves laughing. I'm the only mug in the middle of the pitch on my own. And I would like to think it was two things. One, they knew it was a great honour for me. But two, more than anything, we loved a great laugh, no matter how big, how important the game. And they were just killing themselves laughing at me.
Brilliant. Fantastic. You talked about your style of leadership. And earlier we touched on the fact that players now, captains now, the Martin Odegaards, the Harry Kane, are not the most vocal thing. But could a vocal style of captaincy, someone who shouts. Could that still work in the modern day? I mean, I'm thinking that, for instance, and he's not the captain, but looking back at Manchester United, Andre Onana, when he first came here, had a go at Harry Maguire, you know, and he was castigated for it. So could that sort of more vocal style still work?
Yeah, I would like to think so. And we're all desperate. No, was it? I think because you're seeing pundits now was sort of all players when I was in management with Gerrard Houllier, and I'm looking at them and things have evolved, haven't they? You can't shout at people. You can't do this. You can't do that. It's, you know, but I still think there's a part in that because we're still screaming out, and I think it's not just the club and the players. It's the demands of the fans. They want to see somebody. They don't want, 11 dummies out there all walking around, nothing, not given. It's all right if you're winning games, but when you're losing games and everybody seems to be going through the motion, that is not acceptable, Jeff. So somewhere in players, and we're all different, so somewhere in players, you have to have your leaders. We've seen Steven Gerrard, and he could berate people of his players, but you have to know your players. If somebody can go into a shell, Jeff, you can't, and you have to choose your players that you do it. And that's where I think experience comes when you become a captain and you ease your way into it. And Jordan Henderson did after Steven Gerrard. Yeah.
Well, you mentioned Steven Gerrard, and when you and Gerrard Houllier went back to the club, I mean, you replaced Sami Hyypia was captain, wasn't he? And you replaced him with Steven Gerrard. After all you've been through, how difficult a decision was that?
Do you know what? It was a big decision, but it was no surprise. We were at a time when we're looking for leadership. Sami Hyypia was very calm, lovely guy, played by example, 6'4", really nice guy. Sami, great player, and he was £2.6 million we signed him from Holland, and what a player he was. But Sami was different. Sami was going through a hard time. And this was at a moment, and Gerrard and me used to speak, Gerrard Houllier, and Gerrard's going, I think we need to make this decision, Phil. What do you think? Because you'd always run things by me. And I said, yeah, I know where you're coming from, Gerrard. I says, we need to do it. And he says, it's going to be difficult. How do we do it? And I said, well, you can tell him. I says, well, if you want me to have a word with Sami Hyypia, I can relay what happened with me and Graeme Souness back in 1981, because it was a similar thing. And where it was, as Graeme Souness, it was probably his time to be captain. It was Stevie's. Stevie was, I think, 22 years of age and absolutely growing into this. He was winning games on his own. He was that influential in the side. So it was just by his personality that he was saying, I am the next leader. I am the next person to take this club forward. So the decision had to be made. Sami not playing so well gave us that great opportunity to do it. So I explained to Sami what had happened and what happened with Graeme Souness. And my game, I said, I'm going to show you lot that I'm still a player and everything. I'm not. And what it did, it took it away. That all sort of the blame game, me taking responsibility for it, went out the window when I did. And it did the same with Sami. At team meetings, everything, he was a lot more quieter and composed. And his performances went upwards. And Stevie blossomed as a captain and for the club.
How convinced were you then that the pressures wouldn't affect Steven Gerrard? 22 years of age. I mean, that's a lot of responsibility to shoulder.
As people in the game, Jeff, you knew somebody and you knew he was ready for it. And it was great responsibility at the time because we were thriving. We were sort of on the verge and we were changing things. We changed the discipline at Liverpool. We'd gone from the Spice Boy era to sort of responsibility and discipline within the club. And we changed the whole structure of training. And we were trying to, what we drank, what we ate. We were doing all those sorts of things. Obviously, this has all come, the Frenchman, Gerrard Houllier, wanting this different. We'd seen what had happened with Arsene Wenger, and Gerard Houllier was doing. The players had to adapt, or you weren't coming with us. And this was big moments, and Stevie was so willing to learn. When Stevie first came into the team, did I think he was going to be that great player and that great leader? No. Because he had injury problems, which you were wondering whether we was told from the academy that he's not going to be able to play twice a week. And we went, what? How did Stevie, this boy we've got great hopes for, is not going to be able to play twice a week because of his injury concerns. Well, we need to find out what it was. And he had all these growing pains and everything. So we sorted that out. And he went on to become a huge leader for the club. And again, another one who won trophies. Yes, he didn't win the Premier League, but he won everything else to his name.
I do hope you're enjoying the show. I just want to tell you that you can follow us at Football's Greatest Pod on Instagram, TikTok and Facebook. And search for Football's Greatest Pod to find us on X. Is there anybody in the modern game, any leader or captain in the modern game that you'd like to play under now? Obviously, Bruno Fernandes at Manchester United, I would imagine, be the first choice.
Just rolls off the tongue, Jeff. I think as captains, I'm trying to go through mainly sort of all the top players. It's strange enough, one of the few players, and not now, it's obviously an era that came after ours, was like Tony Adams. You went on about Roy Keane, because Tony wasn't the best footballer in the world. Wasn't the best footballer, but he was a proper leader. And he knew, and he's sort of proper led by example. Great, held his line on a football pitch, which people think, oh, well, what's so good about that? It takes bravery to do that. For people running beyond you all the time and you holding your line and you sort of screaming at people to make sure that they do the jobs. So he was great. But modern day, I'm trying to think.
There aren't many defenders who are captains in the Premier League now. I was looking through just the other day. I think Lewis Dunk is the only defender who is now a regular starter and captain of his Premier League team. It's a surprising change, really.
It's a funny change, because if you think back, it was always the centre-back or the centre-half who was always the captain of the clubs. Now things have changed dramatically. And captains, we look at foreign managers who come into our country and they look at us and they go, what's all this about captaincy? Why so much? And they go, well, I'll tell you what we'll do, we'll have a vote. The committee at a football club, the four or five players, you can decide. Or they'll go, well, I'll tell you what, we'll change it for the pre-season games and we'll change it going into the season to see what is all the fuss in this country. It is a big thing. It is a big thing, whether you like it or not. It is admired. It's a point of contact. It's somebody that fans look up to. And certainly managers at a time on the pitch, once they get to know the English game, they're the ones that they look to lead the team. So it is a big thing. I find that awful strange with some managers.
So when you were in your spell as Liverpool manager then, standing in for Gerard Houllier, who did you take your managerial inspiration from? Oh, it's a stupid question. Neil Warnock, obviously, wasn't it? Your styles were very similar, weren't they?
Yeah, but at least with Neil, I didn't blame the officials every time you got beaten a game. Oh my goodness, he still does it now, for goodness sake. He's had over 1,000 games and he comes on the telly after a game he's been beaten and he doesn't sort of say anything about the opposition or anything. He lambasts the referee and how so many decisions went against him. But listen, I could hold my own on the touchline. But, when I played a bit of a game, Jeff. We had good cop, bad cop with me and Gerard Houllier. When I came with him, I said, I'm different from anybody else that you ever worked with. I said, I could be this raving lunatic on the touchline because I was the one. I tore into that dressing room like a tornado. I went through that dressing room. I made people's lives hard, but it's what was needed at the time. And that's why I was brought in, to bring discipline back. And I wasn't going to let anybody down. And I did ruffle so many feathers. And there'd be a lot of players who disliked me greatly. But when Gerard got ill, God bless him, I took over responsibility. We were going to Kiev, and I'm manager of Liverpool. Now, I changed overnight. I got the staff in, had a word with all the staff, and I said, right, Sami Lee, who I took over then responsibility, I said, Sami, you're going to have to do all the rant and raving on that touchline. I said, because at any given time, I'm going to have to be thinking of substitutes. I'm going to have to be thinking of changing things. This is going to be new for me. And I said, so I'm going to want more demands of you to do all that. But I had to give a team talk in Kiev. And Gerrard Houllier had gone through an 11-hour operation. And I had asked the doctor to speak to all the players. And then I had to give a team talk. And this now is that all the players, don't forget, are now looking at me. I'm the narc. I'm the one who's upset them all. I'm the one who moans after games, will tear into them, and then let Gerrard be a nice, composed one. So I'm giving this, I thought, right, Gerrard Houllier gave wonderful team talks, really good teams. And what he did, like you did Soccer Saturday, he would lead up to the end of the team talk and build the boys up so that he was having great emotion into the team talk. So I would be there then. I'm thinking, how am I going to do this? I could talk, as you know. And I'm thinking, how am I going to give this team talk? I've got to go through tactics and everything and then give a talk about what I demand from the players. So I'll let the doctor tell them how Gerrard was. He'd gone through this had died on the operating table, and they saved his life. So I'm doing it. And something came into my mind, and on my flip charts, right at the end of the thing, I just turned over the last page like that, and I had it in big words, do it for the boss. And it worked. We were the first English team to beat Dynamo Kiev.
Fascinating stuff, Thommo. Look, we're going to finish off by just doing a quick fire greatest with you. So I'm going to ask you to name 10 great people or moments from your career. Okay? So I think I know the answer to this one already. Your greatest manager or coach?
It's got to be Bill Shankly.
Your greatest teammate?
Terry McDermott.
Your greatest opponent?
Played against Johan Cruyff, Pele. It has to be Maradona, Jeff. 1980 at Wembley. We beat them 3-1. Then the world champions. Diego Maradona was only 18 years of age. And there's a wonderful clip. And he comes and he's on the edge of the box and he goes past Jinx. It's like a downhill skier. He's just going past defenders like that. Not me, of course. And he just goes past and he prods it past Ray Clements. And the ball just goes past and there's a camera to the side of the goal. And it goes bink and it knocks it over, literally inches wide. We won the game 3-1. My good friend David Johnson scored twice. But it was a most fantastic bit of skill. And that's 18 then. He was the greatest player. You knew he was going on to be one of the greatest of all time.
Your greatest goal, not many to choose from.
My first one, Jeff, against Derby County. And it was something like 50 years ago, sort of 2 weeks ago or something like that. Honestly, Derby County, top corner. I didn't know how to celebrate. Sorry.
Your greatest match?
1974 FA Cup final versus Newcastle. Beating them 3-0. I'm 20 years of age.
Your greatest mate in football?
Greatest mate in football now it would probably have to be Sami Lee. It was Terry McDermott. Terry lives in the northeast now. So it'd have to be Sami Lee.
Your greatest rollicking?
My greatest rollicking off Bob Paisley at Aston Villa. I sliced an own goal past Ray Clements and he in the dressing room after the game. We've won the league. We only conceded 16 goals all season. And I sliced one past Ray Clements at Villa Park. And after the game, he's in the dressing room and he went, is the captaincy too much for you? Is it getting to you? And I said, you can... Oh. And he went, what do you mean off? And all the players were killing themselves laughing. We'd been beaten 3-1. Oh, my God. That was probably the biggest rollicking that I'd ever had.
Your greatest regret?
My greatest... No regrets, Jeff. I had that most wonderful life. No regrets.
Greatest roommate?
Terry Mack. Terry Mack. Had some great times together.
Yeah. And this might double up with your greatest match, I'm not sure, but your greatest moment, it probably won't actually, your greatest moment.
My greatest moment has to be, because as captain, 1981, May 27, 1981, against Real Madrid in Paris, Parc des Princes, lifting the European Cup. Not a great game, but my greatest ever honour.
And we have reached the end of Football's Greatest. My thanks to Thommo once again. Next time on Football's Greatest,
I think he could have easily have played for someone like, Real Madrid, Barcelona, AC Milan, Man United. He could have easily have played for any of those teams. That's how good he was.
Yeah.
He was a player that he had everything.
Thanks once again for joining us. Football's Greatest is a Folding Pocket production with BBC Studios.